Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit about how COVID has affected me. My daughter lives in a group home with four other women, and since the pandemic, the state mandated that no one could visit group homes or retirement homes. So that meant that I was no longer allowed to come into Maria's home. Um, and so I became frantic because all those little things, like making sure that her shoes are on the correct way, or her toes not bunched up in her shoes, or her G tubes not leaking, and I could go on and on. Those things I was no longer able to do. Um, right before the pandemic, Maria was in the process of getting a new wheelchair. She's able to get one every 5 years, and it was her time. And when they called me and told me that they were ready to fit her for the molding, it was after the mandate came down that I was no longer able to go in there. So that was frustrating because her wheelchair stopped working and she was no longer able to tilt it back to relieve the pressure off of her spine or her backside. So that was very concerning for me. Um, so now we visit each other through the sliding glass window. So she can hear me if I speak very loudly. And that's how we do our visits right now. When we lived in Georgia, we had a house, and Maria had someone that came in on a regular basis and helped me with taking care of her. That was before she got too big for me to carry. I remember when I received the waiver in Georgia, and I was so grateful, and I made a promise to myself that I would help other families in any way that I could. So people would look at me strangely because I would walk up to them at the grocery store or wherever it was because I wanted to give them the same information that I had. So that's why I'm doing this. I remember being a young mother with Maria and people telling me about support groups, and I would just brush them off. I felt like there was no one else out there again that would understand where I was coming from. And so I didn't even bother. I assumed that most of the families were two-parent households. I assumed they had other children. I just assumed it would not pertain to me. And that could have been one of the biggest mistakes because who knows how many resources I could have had or what information I could have had back then that I ended up missing out on. Um, although I want to journal my experience, share my experience with raising Maria, more than that, I want to create a community of support. So what I did was I started a Facebook group, and it's called Family Affair. I'm open to changing the name of that group. If anyone comes up with something better, that would be great. But the purpose of that group would be a support system, especially in this time, because I'm sure there are people out there that have special needs, family members that haven't left the house, because we all know how dire it is to keep our special needs children safe and healthy at this time. Before COVID hit, Maria and I were averaging about 2 hospital visits per month. It was to the point where the nurses knew us by name. If I had to go to work, I was okay with leaving her at the hospital because they had my phone number and they knew her because we were there that often. Thank goodness that we have not had to go to the hospital during this pandemic. Um, I want the focus of the community, the Facebook group, to be on supports and building relationships. I want to encourage all parents and all families from all walks of life to join the Facebook group, and I am going to put a link in this video for you all to click on so that you can join. I know that we all have different experiences. I think that we're all experts because you have to become an expert of raising your special needs child because there's just so much that goes into it. So if we share our wealth of knowledge, then we're all providing a service. We're all being serviced. We're all being supported. Last year, we gave away a stander. So Maria had a stander that she refused to use, and it just sat in the corner for at least 2 years. And it was to the point where they would use it to store her clothes. I mean, she had a closet, she had a dresser, but they were putting clothes on the stander because it was just sitting there. And I called Maria's occupational therapist and I asked him if he knew of a family that needed the stander. And so, long story short, he picked it up and he gave it to the family, and they were just so grateful. And I was happy to have helped them, and at the same time, we could have helped them a lot sooner. So maybe you have a tumble chair that's sitting in a corner somewhere and someone else desperately needs it. Or you have hacks on how to eliminate drool or something like that. That would be the whole point of our community. The second reason I wanted to build a special needs community is because I know how it feels to want to ask questions in an IEP meeting or at a doctor's office and not feeling sure enough about what you're going to say, or even knowing how to properly formulate a question to get the answers that you need. It can be intimidating at times. That's just real. So if you come into the community and you ask your questions and you get the help and the answers or the feedback or the support or even the encouragement that you need, then we all benefit. So please join the group. Feel free to ask me any questions that you have, and I plan to record another video soon. Thank you and stay well.